begin? We're all looking for the promised land. And in the end, we just need someone to hold our hands. Everybody needs some kind of refuge, something to run to, someone who loves you. I'll be the light guiding you through the night when the stars just refuse to shine. And I'll be your shelter, that safe place to hide, your sanctuary.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Everyone is Addicted. This is a safe space for my guests to share their stories of how addiction has affected them. And today, Sean has been so kind and gracious as to share his story with us. So I am going to give it off to Sean and let him tell his story. So go ahead, Sean. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah,
Oh, thank
my
you.
story is definitely I'd like to say it's unique, but there's a lot of us out there. I I started doing drugs when I was probably 15, and it was more reactionary. I didn't know what it was, but I started smoking weed and doing the same things, and I was in prison by the time I was 19. But on my 19th birthday, I transported to the state yard. So that means I'd been in the county jail for 6 months after I turned 18.
Oh, the county jail. And I just because you're from Brantford, right?
No, I'm actually in Arizona.
Oh my God. For some reason, I thought you were from where I'm from, and the county jail here is awful. That's why I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
"What?" But I'm assuming they're all the same. So, ugh.
Well, actually, they're all different. I've been in a lot of county jails, and I mean, there's some that are really nice, and then there's some that are just dungeons and horrible, and it's.
They
But at
shut
that
ours
age,
down.
it's all bad.
They shut ours down, and it just sits as an empty building now. So it wasn't
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. Well, especially in the Midwest. So in the Midwest, like I did time in Oklahoma too, and they had the old archaic jails. I can remember being in Pryor, Oklahoma, in their county jail, and it sits on top of the courthouse. And it was
Really?
the former, yeah, it's the old brig of the USS Constitution or something like that. It
That's
literally had the markings from the Navy ship. It's
that's
all bars. Yeah,
That's kind of cool if you're not in so like I as
yeah,
you're a prisoner, but that's kind of cool. Like I've never heard of that before. That's really cool. Not the
yeah.
fact that you were there, not that, but just the architecture aspect.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was cool in that aspect because I was like, well, like I said, I've been in a lot of county jails, so it's unique, and I'm sure
Hmm.
it's all lead paint as well and everything. That's all these flakes, but it's bars and
Yes,
yeah,
all that good stuff.
yeah. But yeah, but Arizona, the one I was at wasn't too bad my first time, but it was jail. And so the first time I was arrested, I was only out for they kept me locked up for 4 months, gave me probation, and then violated me 2 weeks after being out for not checking in, even though I did.
Of course.
And yeah, so they said, well, rather than probation, we'll just send you to prison. That's better for you anyways. It's only 6 months. And then I was out for
Only
2 months
six
and went back in
months.
for 3 years. Yeah, and yeah, it ended up a whole vicious cycle going in and out, and I ended up doing almost 25 years of prison in the
That's
revolving
a
door.
lot. That in itself is a feat that are you survived that mentally, even, like not the physical aspect of it, but mentally, the fact that you survived that is incredible
Yeah,
because that would break almost anybody that I've ever met.
yeah,
Like
and
a
it's well,
gentleman.
yeah, but you can become used to it. I was talking with a guy the other night, or reading his post about PTSD and how, if you remember in the movie The Green Mile, uh, the guy was talking about, sometimes you start depending on these walls. At first you hate them and you yell against them. I wish I could remember the quote from the movie,
It's
But at the end of it,
institutionalized, is what the word is. And the weirdest thing about you saying the Green Mile was when you were talking about the prison. I thinking about the Green Mile and what the prison and the Green Mile looked like. It's so weird that you mentioned that when I was just thinking it. Wow.
yeah, yeah,
Anyhow,
it's a
sorry.
powerful movie. It really gets into it,
It
especially
is. It was my favorite
when
movie when I was younger because it was very powerful and like I don't know, it just got to me every time I watched it.
yeah, and the way they treated each other in there is a little that's a little more older. They've changed their ways a little bit. We've built our own societies in there.
Mm,
But there are some yards, like especially in Oklahoma, where they are rough on the other inmates. They're going to try and break you. Like they were doing to that guy. Hey, Piggy, 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 and he couldn't take. They're betting on who was going to survive.
yeah.
That first night. And I've been in places like that. But then, like here in Arizona, they lift you up a little bit more, or they used to. In the times that are changing back to where it's
Well,
more
from
predatory.
I took a course about like prison systems around the world and and it was about we did a lot on like the states and when you're talking about like Arizona and stuff, they told I from what we learned that those are some pretty hardcore prisons. Like they're not an easy prison sentence, a place to
No,
do like a prison sentence. They're hard, rough prisons, is what I was taught in school like 20 years ago. But I'm assuming that's when you were there, so I'm saying like that, like they're not easy prisons. So the
no. But yeah,
I'm just saying from what I have learned, they aren't easy prisons compared to what you would get here. You know what I mean?
oh yeah. Well, so there's a couple of things that happen is it and it's mostly on the coast, East Coast and West Coast. The Aryan Brotherhood took over in the 70s, 60s, whenever they came out, and they did it for protection, protect themselves,
Mhm.
and then it turned into control. And so on these coasts so you're not being preyed upon as much by the other inmates, but you have to stay in line. They got rules, they got expectations, and if you break those rules and expectations, you're either going to get beat down or sacked. It's
Mhm.
you have to stay within these rules. Whereas in Oklahoma, they didn't really have them, and they preyed upon each other more, and that made those rough in a different way. And
Yeah.
they all had their own little, yeah. But Arizona is definitely hardcore, but it's
That's
all
what I
changing. It's
wanted to
all,
say. Yeah.
yeah,
Because I know like you're making it sound like it's just like regular prisons, but I just wanted like the viewers to know like from what I was taught in school, those are hardcore
yeah,
prisons to like live and survive and be in and even with the guards and everything, they're just the harder prisons in the States than a lot of the other ones. The ones in the
yeah.
like Arizona and Texas, I was told were two of the really hard places to go to prison
Oh
in.
yeah, Texas is definitely rough too, and that's one of the. So it all goes back to the Aryan Brotherhood, and there's three founding states that had them: California, Arizona, and Texas. And of
Um,
course, those are the roughest.
at least though, you had some form of protection. You know what I mean? I know
Oh
that
yeah, yeah.
it's not good to say that they're a good organization or anything,
No,
but
no, definitely not.
at least you had some form of protection and you weren't just a sitting duck, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, kids basically looking out for yourself, or your own rather than yourself.
Hmm.
And it's transferring away from that in its own too. A lot of that's changing. The whole racial thing behind the prisons are changing, and it's definitely different. But you got to look out for yourselves. The staff members really don't care that much. There's a handful, but the way I describe it when I'm talking about staff in prison is that imagine the biggest office that you've worked at or biggest company, and then they all put on badges. Those are the guards that are at the prisons. The exact same people. The ones that are angry, the ones that don't do their job, the ones that are there for a check, the ones that want to be super cop. There's a whole gamut of these people, and it's worked out badly for me at times. I've had the guards in Oklahoma put me at war with the Indian Brotherhood. They told them I was a devil worshiper and I had feathers, because Yeah, they took all my spiritual stuff. Said, "Hey, this guy's a devil worshiper." I'm what I was like
Of course.
also true, pagan. Yeah, and they said, "Oh, here, this guy's a devil worshiper," and there's a whole thing after that.
Oh, I can
But
imagine because even just I read tarot cards, and my daughter had a friend who wasn't allowed to play with her because I was a devil worshiper because I read tarot cards.
yeah,
So even on the outside world, if that's happening, I can only imagine. I like that's 10 times worse.
oh yeah, because everyone in there's who is getting better, even if they aren't, they're better than everyone else. So
Hmm.
it's a whole, and that's one of the things where my anxiety comes from is imagine being on the set of Big Brother, where everyone's judging everything that you do all the time, and that's how it was in there. So the way you dress, the way you look, the way you act,
Even the way you
judgment.
walk.
Yeah, the way you, that I got a funny story about that actually. Uh, I've had three people comment on the way I walk. And the
Prison
first one
walk.
was this lady said, she asked me if I was a firefighter. I said, not kind of, not really, no. So why? Well, I didn't tell her that. I was like, so well, you walk like a firefighter. I was like, oh. I was like, well, I did do wildland firefighting. I trained for it. Then COVID hit. While I was in prison, I trained for it. Then COVID hit, shut it down, it all changed. So, huh. So that's where I said, it must be because everything hurts. I said, that's what it is. I'm sore. So I'm walking like you know, putting in a lot of work. But then another lady said, she mentioned that she liked the way I walk. I was like, man, I'm gonna embrace this. And then just recently, another one said, you walk like a gangster. I like that. I was like, oh, okay, I see what it is. I walk with confidence.
Yeah, my ex, like my daughter's father, he's institutionalized. He has been in and out of prison since I say 14 years old, and he's got a certain way he walks, and like you said, with confidence, with his back up in a certain way. He pulls one
Mhm.
pant leg up. He has a certain walk, and other people I noticed that are institutionalized walk like that too. And I'm like, oh, I get
Yeah,
it. There's a reason for it. I get it.
yeah.
It's because you don't want to show weakness. It's your walk of showing, you can't, I'm like, you can't touch me,
Good
but
strength. You're strong. Yeah, it's like
yeah,
shoulders back. It's like, yeah, I'm ready for you. What do you want? You know?
yeah, what's up, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I definitely got some good stuff out of my incarcerations. I had to fight for a lot of it.
Sober in prison, or did you get sober after prison?
Not both, so during some incarcerations, like early in Arizona, there wasn't meth. There's only weed and heroin. And
Mm,
I don't do heroin, so I was sober.
yeah.
And that's one of the things about the addiction. People are like, man, you didn't learn your lesson while you was in there. You didn't get better. You didn't quit. It's like, well, I quit by force. It was never something that I worked on,
Well,
you know?
that's a difference too. If you're forced or like you're quitting for somebody else, you're not gonna stay sober because you don't want to be sober. You're just doing it to please, well, whoever, or because they forced you to do it, right?
Yeah.
So it's not gonna sink in because you're not ready yet, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then when I did the 14 years in Oklahoma, I was actually, they were calling me to the gate four times to release me. They had to keep calling me to be released because I was in the bathroom getting high right before I was getting out. Yeah, that's,
Well, at least you don't know if you can find it on the outside, right? So you're like,
yeah.
well, I don't want
Well,
to go
and then
through
actually,
withdrawal.
yeah. Well, and actually, I didn't do it for 4 months after that. That was the last time I got high for 4 months. And then,
Well, that's what I mean, right? Like
yeah,
you have connections there, so why
yeah,
does you don't want to, go through withdrawals? So you do it, and then you get out, and you have to suffer through that part
yeah,
because you have the connections anymore, right?
yeah, yeah. And I had a lot in there during that last sentence. I had a lot, and because I was one of the ones smuggling it in, I was on the cowboy crew, and I rode a horse every day, and
That's pretty
everyone
cool.
knew.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, well that was awesome. That was so. I tell people I grew up on the white trash side country. We were all, but and all my family in Bakersfield and Oildale were cotton pickers and potato farmers.
Well, I know I've
So
heard of Bakersfield before.
yeah, well that's where all the Okies and Texans went to during the Dust Bowl. So all my family from Oklahoma in that time went out to Taft, Delano, Wasco, Bakersfield. So and that's why I went back. But so when I was in Oklahoma doing that cowboy time, before that I'd gotten certified in horticulture. I went to school for a Votech, and they had this huge farm and a huge garden, and they wanted to start providing culinary herbs to all the other prisons. So like, yeah, I can do that. So I built this whole greenhouse for them. And my buddy was on the cowboy crew. I was like, man, I want to go ride. So I've only been on a horse once. Oh yeah, come on. Well, they never could get me off the horse after that.
That would be
And
awesome. Like if you know, that sounds like fun and
oh, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I went fishing. We were hunting animals. We had this free range of everything we could do, and we're on unsupervised for the most part. And we take off riding horses. Traditionally, we'd have to rope the calves out of the ice and doctor them, throw them over our saddle, and bring them back to the cowboy barn. And it was a lot of fun. It changed my life because that's I've had a ranch since then. I lost it due to drugs, but that's my whole goal is to get back to that whole life that I was living.
because that is really cool. And I've always kind of wanted to I watched the show Yellowstone, you know,
Yeah.
obviously, but like I have always, even before that, wanted to kind of live on a ranch and have horses and that kind of stuff. I've just obviously never had the money to buy the land and the animals, you know. So
Yeah.
that's really cool that you got to do that and experience that in a place where you
Well,
never think you would.
oh yeah. Well, and so you mentioned that you having the money and all that to be able to do it for yourself. Well, the fact that I started my own ranch is one of the pivotal reasons that I'm doing what I'm doing now. Because so I was working, I got out and I went straight to work for a trail ride outfit, taking tourists on trail rides, and I loved that. You know, uh, and I was going to start my own survival thing. So I was going to take tourists on trail rides, but teach them survival training at the same time. And the boss's mother found out about it and fired me. And the boss is all for it. He's like, yeah,
That would be a moneymaker, 100%. People would love that, especially like
yeah,
after COVID, even before COVID. Like you want, they have TV shows about it, The Survivalist and all those
yeah.
things, right? So that would be a huge
It's
moneymaker because
huge.
teaching
Yeah,
people how to do what they watch on TV.
yeah.
That that's
But she
crazy.
was jealous and fired me. And I was like, you know what? And I wasn't nowhere near ready. It wasn't about to happen anytime soon. And really, I didn't think it could happen. It's just a pipe dream. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna do it now. They want to fire me. I'm gonna start my own trail ride outfit. So I had $300 and a brand new truck. I was making good money there and at another place. So I'm gonna start my own. So I went knocking on doors from Camp Verde, Arizona to Flagstaff, wheeling and dealing with ranches. And I'd found a 20-acre ranch on the Oak Creek River, which is prime real estate. It wasn't the best place, but I was paying $300 a month for it. Had a house that was being built on it. So I went and got all these horses. Within 4 months, I had 40 acres, 7 horses, 2 horse trailers, goats, sheep, everything. And all I started out was at $400.
Yeah, powerhouse, eh?
Yeah. So that's what gave me the belief this time during this incarceration, so the success was one of the issues. So I had all this money. I'd go to Scottsdale and no Tempe, and I'd pick up a wad of cash from the lady that was paying me to build a winery on the property. So I
Mm,
had more money than I'd ever had in my life because I'd been a junkie my whole life. I had nothing before. I was couch surfing and everything I had fit in a duffel bag.
yeah.
Yeah. So I had all this stuff and I started messing around with women. I went for the easy women and my old lady, my baby mama slit her wrist and went to the hospital with our son and they took our son without even talking to me. Didn't do anything. And so I lost my son and I went off on the deep end. It just went because I was getting high maybe once a month. I never around my son. It was very recreational. I had control of it, like we pretend. And I went
Yeah.
straight at it.
Well, it's in a situation like that, I feel like it's like people with drinking. Yes, the like people are under control, but if you are having something that's going on in your life that's bad and you can't cope with it, then you shouldn't drink because it's you're gonna be a bad drunk that night or something, right? It's the
Yeah.
same thing with the drugs, right? It's like I said, with my dad passed away and I lost my house, so I was like the same thing, just off the deep end. But in
Mhm.
your situation, it's even harder because our children are so important to us that having that happen and you have no control over it, of course you're going to go off the deep end. I don't
Yeah.
blame you in any way. Like
Yeah.
everybody would.
Yeah. And I ended up selling the ranch off a piece at a time. Well, I lost the ranch immediately. Uh, my probation officer called the lady I was leasing my land from and told her, "Hey, this guy's getting high. Do you want him there?" Had no right to do that. And she said, "Nope." So I lost it instantly. Had to get rid of all the horses. And they said, as a matter of fact, because I was doing parole for Oklahoma, they said, matter of fact, go back to Oklahoma. So I had to leave the state, took all my stuff there, and ended up going back to prison for another 7 years. And that's when so I learned that I could do it. Getting that ranch with $400 in the truck taught me that I could do it, that I have skill and ability. Well, this time, I was talking about how the racial thing was changing in the prisons here. There was a white guy and a black guy that wanted to live together, and the staff would not let them because it's a big no-no on the yard, because
Oh,
it could put them at danger.
yeah.
And so they sued them. And as a result of that lawsuit, we got Xboxes on the yard, and we got tablets. Every inmate got issued a tablet.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the tablets had podcasts, and that's because so really the tablets were a money making grab because we could get movies the day they come out. We could rent them. The movies that y'all are watching brand new, we were watching brand new.
Yeah.
We could buy music. We could buy text messages cost, pictures cost. I mean, we couldn't take pictures, but we could receive them. But I wasn't really buying much. I bought a lot of music. That's all I bought. But because I was working for a trucking company in there, and that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, they make a lot of money in prison. But I started listening to podcasts, and I started listening to the School of Greatness by Lewis House, and then I moved on to the Quote of the Day show, Sean Croxton, all these podcasts that were reaffirming that I could do it, that I had the ability to do it. While at the same time, I was educating myself and I was taking psychology. And I'd taken it before, but this time it really resonated, and I was learning child development. And we know if a child goes through certain things, he's going to turn out a certain way on average, or usually. So like if they're born to, if they have alcohol in their system when they're babies, they're going to be prone to be violent. There's all these, if they're been molested, they may have their own sex crimes. There's a lot of things that we know that will happen to a child because of their development.
Yeah, I took child and youth worker as well, so I completely understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it sucks, but it's just kind of how our lives turn out, and it's like we can't. It's not their fault, and that's
Right.
why I'm so worried about my daughter all the time because of her father
Yeah.
and what I know about addiction and how I was an addict too, and
Hmm.
how her like dad that she sees every day is also an ex-addict. It's just she's surrounded by people that have had addiction. So I worry so much about it.
Yeah. Make you hypersensitive to everything she sees and hears, or
Mm.
her
I don't
responses to
shield
things.
her. She actually
Yeah.
watches my podcast because I want her to know that it is a big deal to not do, like, you know what I mean? Don't she already hates the fact that I smoke, right? So like
Oh, yeah.
she already knows what addiction is even from seeing that. but then in seeing where we live is heavily populated with addicted people, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
she sees that's why I wanted to do this to bring like the faces and like humanize who these people are so that she's not,
Destigmatized. Yeah.
yeah, she's not thinking that they're bad people because sometimes they'll talk to us and she gets scared and I'm like, no, it's okay. Like they're not gonna hurt us. Don't worry, you know? So
Yeah.
that was a lot of why I wanted to do this is so that people she can see that they're real people. They have kids too. They've had experiences in their lives that have led them down bad
Mhm.
paths, but they're working on it and they're bringing themselves back, you know? Exactly
Yeah.
like what you're doing, right?
You know. Yeah, and that's it helps, and I let my son know. He doesn't really listen. He's only 9, and he knows that I've been in prison. He figured it out himself from memories from coming to visit me. We didn't say it for a long time. He's like, weren't you in jail? It's like, yeah. So how'd you know? He's like, I remember going to see you with all the fences. It's like, yeah.
We tell
But
her when he goes to jail because it's not worth lying to her and saying that daddy's. When she was little, we used to tell her daddy's sick right now and
oh yeah.
daddy's sick right now. And then eventually we're like, we can't keep telling her that he's sick. She's gonna get worried about that, right?
Oh
Think he
yeah.
has cancer or something. So we had to tell her so she knows, right? And
Yeah.
I because you kind of can't hide it, I guess, right? After
No.
a while.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're probably, honestly better off for it because they know what not to do. We gave them the playbook,
Oh yeah.
what not to do in life.
Yeah.
Yes,
Exactly.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. So
But
what
uh,
I gotta say though, on the psychology, so
mm,
that's what I learned what are the child development. I was like, well, how does that apply to me? So if that's true, then why doesn't it apply to me? Because I was molested at 12 or uh 8 by a female and I was 19. That was a cousin for a while, for about a year, I was being molested by her. And then at 12, my mother, her boyfriend beat her, and then my dad sat outside all night protecting us, and they flipped a coin as either Alaska or Arizona, so we came to Arizona to run from the guy. Yeah. Well, the first summer here, within a couple of months, he tried beating my mother, that boyfriend that we ran with, and uh, she he beat her so badly. When I ran out there, I heard her yelling. So I ran out there. I'm 12, and he had her on the ground, choking her, trying to kill her. And I yelled at him, "Hey, I'm calling the cops." So he came at me, and but there's a gun that my dad gave my mother for protection. It got thrown around. He ended up picking it back up, and me and my brother and my mother on one side of the table, and he was on the other. And he set the gun on the table. My mom swooped it up and shot him. She emptied the gun on him. Yeah, but she was so beat up that she told my cousins that they were in a car wreck and he died in the car wreck. Yeah. And then
people are
after that,
smart,
I was
right?
just yeah. And then after that, school was hell. I was bullied because I got buck teeth. I got my
I
nose
was
has never been
bullied too.
broken, and I didn't know for the longest time because people always tell me to close my mouth, quit breathing through my mouth. Well, I can't breathe. This my nose is broken. I can't. If this one side has any
Yeah.
sinus problems, I have to breathe through my mouth. So more often than not, I'm breathing through my mouth, which is displaying my bad teeth. And I was a social pariah all through school. All through school, I fought all the time because I
Mm.
wasn't witty enough to come up with a comeback. So I just followed up, and then I whipped the crap out of someone, and to the point where at 15, I was arrested for beating up a 19-year-old who attacked me. And then no, that was at 14. And then at 15, I was arrested for beating up a 21-year-old who attacked me. Both times I went to jail for adults attacking me. And
I
that just
got
began the cycle. Yeah.
I got lucky. I got bullied. I'm small, right? So I'm easy target. People like all the girls in my school hated me. I never had any friends. I got picked on really bad, but one night at a party, I was with my boyfriend, and one of the girls that picked on me is like, I want to talk to Jasmine. Well, I was high on drugs and I grabbed like a meat cleaver, literally put it in my
Oh shit.
pocket because I knew she was going to hit me, right? And
Yeah.
she promised my boyfriend that she wasn't going to hurt me. So I gave him the meat cleaver. And then she hit me and ran away. But thank God that I gave him that knife because I would have killed her. I was too high on drugs to not have killed her, right?
Yeah.
And I would have been in prison for 25 years just for that,
Yeah.
right? And it wasn't, and it's because the anger behind the bullying. And I know you understand the anger that you feel behind the bullying and being held down and having people pound you in the face because,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not fun and it's not fair. And that's what also psychologically creates a lot of anxiety and mental health problems. So
Oh yeah.
I can see where, like, it's like, you were put on that path because others treated you poorly, which then sent you into that world of negative things that go on, which is the same with
Yeah.
me. And, you know, it's what
Yeah.
happens
And that's
here.
yeah, and that's what I learned. I learned. So I was like, all right, well, how, if it did affect me, how? And it all came back to the molestation. Being molested by the woman. So I'm already a social pariah. I want friends. So, and that's the other aspect of it. It really comes down to codependency. So the people that liked me and had fun with me were high. The only women that would have anything to do with me were high. So I every time I get out, what's the number one thing you want? You want some money, and you want to find a woman. And for a lot of people, it's for different reasons. You need a mother, you need someone to take care of you, you need someone to have sex with, and you need someone to share things with.
Mhm.
And we never had that. We never had it healthy. And so, and that's one of the things. Once I learned all that, and I started psychoanalyzing myself, and I'd walk the tracks listening to this podcast, it just everything changed. It's like, all right, well, if that's true, if that is possible, because I don't know if it is, I'm just guessing. If it is true, how do I now prevent it? So the first thing I do is raise my class of people. I'm not going to go out with a woman that's going to be willing to sleep with me on the first night. I'm not going to
That's smart.
try and find a woman at a bar. So it's kept me single for the last 3 years that I've been out.
But no,
But
it's smart thinking. I wouldn't even have thought to do that myself. That's very smart
yeah,
and
and
wise.
everything changed. And then I started. It's like, all right, well, if this is true and it applies to something. Well, and another thing was I was watching a show, and you know how these days the shows are all about, and I'll put it negatively. The way I thought then was it was all about the sob stories. That's all shows are about how someone's sad story. They're projecting all this stuff. But I was watching, and I need to figure out what it was. But I was watching the challenge, and there's this lady who said something, and it didn't resonate with me, but it was so powerful that I realized how it could resonate with someone else. It's like, wow, maybe these things have a purpose. Maybe they can help people. So, well, crap, why can't I help people? So I started telling my story, and then everything
Well,
changed.
well, thank you for sharing. My thing only lets me take
Uh,
so long, so it's gonna click out soon. I would love it if you would come back for a part two because we didn't really get everything.
oh yeah,
We didn't really get to talk about everything. Would you be willing to come back for a part two? In the next,
yeah,
like, okay, well, I'll set that up with you. I won't make everybody listen to us make the plan for it, but
yeah,
John is gonna come back for part two. But for now, I'm going to ask if he has anything last words to say for just now. And we will have him back very soon to, well, you know what? We're going to have him back. Part two is going to come out right after part one so that this makes sense, is what I'm going to say.
yeah. That'll work.
But does he have any last, or sorry, do you have any last words just for now? And we will be coming back very shortly.
Uh, well, just to believe in yourself. You can do anything. I've gone from the gutters to president of my nonprofit art teacher and radio show host of Stigma Shift. Yeah, so tune into my show Stigma Shift. It's every Thursday on KRIM FM at 8 o'clock. It's powerful. I try and bare my soul, my scars as a salve for other people's wounds.
I love that. Oh, well, that's amazing. I actually really love that because I always say that I try to I had a different business, right? So it's like a holistic healing business. So I
Mm,
always said I was trying to fix other people until I could figure out how to fix myself. So I can
exactly.
relate to that so much. But we are gonna have Sean back right after this episode. So they're gonna be back to back. I just gonna let him go for now and he'll be back before you know it. So thank you, Sean, and also thank
Yeah,
you for agreeing to do a part two because you just have so much to share that I want to get your whole story out because it's incredible.
yeah,
So
we're only halfway there.
yeah, we're only halfway there. That's why we're doing two. So thank you so much, and we will be talking to you shortly, okay?
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Bye for now.
Yeah.
So cold, I drive on